Ever stumbled upon a brand that just eases cool? That's Farm Rio for you.
Definitely.
This Brazilian brand, they're all about vibrant prints and living
Yeah.
life to the fullest.
It's true. They've taken South America by storm, and now they're making some serious waves here in the US and even over in Europe.
And what's really interesting about Farm Rio is it's not just clothes they're selling.
Yeah.
It's like a whole feeling. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. It's a powerful strategy,
I
right?
see.
Especially in the global women's wear market,
Oh, absolutely.
which is huge, by the way.
Yeah.
Like mind-blowingly huge. We're talking about a $657 billion market.
See, that's what blows my mind. It's like, okay, you want to sell clothes, but to go global, that takes guts.
Oh, yeah.
So in this deep dive, we're going to break down how Farm Rio actually pulled it off. We're going to look at the strategy behind their expansion,
Right.
the challenges they face, and what we can all learn
Exactly,
in
because
their story.
it's a great case study for anyone really who's interested in global business strategy, but especially in a field like fashion, where knowing your audience is so, so important.
It's everything, right? You've got to really
Yeah.
tap into what people want. And speaking of knowing your audience, Farm Rio's origin story is like a textbook example of finding your niche and then just owning it.
Absolutely.
They started by solving a problem.
See, and what's fascinating here is that the problem wasn't that there weren't enough clothing options in Brazil.
Right.
It was that there wasn't anything that truly captured that carioca spirit.
Okay. Explain that a little bit, because some of us haven't been lucky enough to make it to Rio yet.
So imagine, like, the energy of Rio. Right, the vibrancy, the joy, the kind of boldness that the city is known for. There wasn't really clothing that reflected that.
So it's almost like a gap in the market waiting to be filled.
Exactly.
And Farm Rio swoops in the 90s
Yeah.
with their bold colors, their nature-inspired prints. They're basically like, hey, we're bottling up the essence of Rio, making it wearable.
Totally. And they made it affordable, too, which I think was essential, particularly in the beginning.
That's smart. You got to make it accessible.
Yeah, it wasn't about being exclusive, right? It was about celebrating this Brazilian culture and inviting everyone to be a part of it.
So we've got this brand that absolutely killing it on their home turf.
Yeah.
But how do you translate that same magic to a global audience?
Right.
That's a whole other challenge.
Absolutely.
That's what we're going to unpack in the next part of our deep dive.
Sure.
So last time we were talking about how Farm Rio totally owned the Brazilian market.
Right. They became like synonymous with that Rio style.
Exactly. So then the question becomes, how do you take that and make it work global?
Right, because it's not as simple as just opening up shop in a new country.
Not at all.
Especially the U.S. Talk about a tough market to crack.
So how did they do it?
Well, the case study really highlights their strategic approach. Like, they really thought this through.
Okay, so what was step one? Did they just open a flagship store in Times Square and hope for the best?
You'd be surprised how many brands try that.
Yeah, right.
But Farm Rio, they were smarter. One of the first things they did, and it seems so simple, was actually changing their name
Right.
to Farm Rio. Yeah,
I mean, it's subtle, but I get it. You're instantly emphasizing those Brazilian roots.
exactly. Especially for those who might not know the brand already. It's like a signal.
Like a little exotic flair.
Totally. And they needed that because the U.S. market, it's all about differentiation.
So, name change, check. What about the clothes themselves? Did they tweak their designs for the U.S. market?
Oh, for sure. Take a look at their U.S. collections. They've got more solids, toned down prints. They even started doing seasonal collections.
Ah, that makes sense, because in Brazil, it's basically summer year-round, right?
Exactly. So they had to adapt to the whole fashion calendar thing.
Which we all know is a beast in itself.
Oh, tell me about it.
But okay, designs, got it.
Yeah,
What about pricing? Did they have to reposition themselves at all?
absolutely. The U.S. is way more segmented than Brazil. You've got fast fashion, contemporary, and then like the luxury brands.
Okay, and where did Farm Rio land?
They went for what's called opening contemporary.
So for those of us who don't speak fluent fashion, what does that even mean?
Think of it like the bridge between those trendy, affordable pieces and then the more high-end designer stuff.
Okay, so you're talking about higher quality, more unique designs.
And a price tag that reflects that, exactly. Reformation, Alice Olivia, those are some brands in that space.
Gotcha. So Farm Rio is right there with them. But that must meant upping their manufacturing game too, right?
Oh, absolutely. You can't just slap a higher price tag on something and call it a day. They had to up their quality control, use better fabrics, really refine their whole production process.
It's actually kind of amazing how entering a new market forces a brand to level up in so many ways.
It's sink or swim, right?
Totally. But even with a solid product and a clear brand identity, breaking into the U.S. market, That's no small feat.
It's incredibly difficult. You need more than just a great product.
So how do they get noticed?
This is where their strategy really shines. Wholesale partnerships.
Okay, so get your clothes in the right stores.
Exactly. They landed deals with Saks, Neiman Marcus, Nordstrom.
Those are some heavy hitters.
Right. And that's huge for a brand like Farm Rio because it instantly gives them credibility.
It's like a stamp of approval from the fashion gods.
Exactly. But, and this is a big but, it's not all sunshine and roses with these partnerships.
What do you mean, what's the catch?
Well, it all comes down to something called channel conflict, which can get kind of messy.
Channel conflict. Sounds kind of ominous, doesn't it?
It can be, especially for a brand like Farm Rio that's playing on multiple fields at once.
Okay, so break it down for us. What's the deal with channel conflict?
Well, imagine you're a brand and you're selling your stuff in a bunch of different places, right? You've got your own stores, your website, and then you're also in big department stores.
Okay, sounds pretty standard so far.
Right. But then those different channels, they start bumping into each other, competing, maybe even undercutting each other. That's channel conflict in a nutshell.
I see. So it's like
Yeah.
everyone's fighting for the same customer.
Exactly. And Farm Rio, they've got a lot to juggle, right? They've got those gorgeous flagship stores.
Which are basically like mini Rio escapes.
Exactly. They've got the website, and then they've got those big wholesale deals with like Saks and Nordstrom.
So how do you manage all of that without it turning into a total disaster?
Carefully. No, I mean, it takes a lot of strategy and honestly constant tweaking.
Let's talk about their own stores first. Those are huge investments. But I imagine they give Farm Rio a lot of control over the brand experience.
Oh, absolutely. You walk into one of those stores and it's like stepping into their catalog. You've got the music, the plants, the whole vibe. It's all very intentional. But you're right, those stores are expensive.
And it's not just the rent.
No way. You've got staff. You've got to keep everything looking amazing all the time. There's a reason those places are so Instagrammable.
True. It's all about creating that feeling.
Exactly. And that costs money. So those stores, they're amazing for brand building. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, they're like billboards you can walk into.
Totally. But they've got to be in the right locations and they've got to be managed really well to make sure they're actually bringing in the big bucks.
Then you've got the website, which these days is pretty much non-negotiable.
Well, you got to be online for sure, but even that comes with its own headaches.
Like what?
Well, for one thing, how do you capture that Farm Rio feeling, that whole sensory experience online?
It's tough. I mean, you can only do so much with pictures and videos.
Right. And then you've got the logistics of actually running an online store, shipping costs, people returning stuff, inventory management. It's a lot.
And then there's the whole wholesale side of things, which is kind of a double-edged sword, isn't it?
Totally. On one hand, those partnerships are what put Farm Rio on the map in the U.S. I mean, they got them into those really high-end stores.
Which is huge for brand recognition.
Huge. But, and it's a big but.
I'm sensing a but coming.
What if someone sees a Farm Rio dress at Nordstrom for $200?
Okay.
And then they go online and see it on the Farm Rio website for $180.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Who are they going to buy from?
It's tempting to go for the lower price, even if it means missing out on that whole Farm Rio store experience.
Right. So it's this balancing act. You want to be in all these places, but you don't want to end up competing with yourself.
This is where data becomes super important, isn't it? Like, they've got to really understand their customers and where they're shopping.
Absolutely. The case study talks about this a lot. Farm Rio, they have to be on top of their data. They need to know which channels are the most profitable, which ones are driving the most brand awareness, and which ones might actually be cannibalizing sales from other channels.
So it's not about picking one channel and sticking with it. It's about figuring out how to make them all work together.
Exactly. And that's what's so interesting about Farm Rio. They're not afraid to experiment, to try new things, and to constantly adapt their strategy based on what the data is telling them.
Which is what makes them such a great case study for anyone interested in global business, really. It's not just about the clothes. It's about understanding the bigger picture, right?
It's about the strategy, the adaptability, the willingness to take risks.
And maybe a little bit of that Brazilian flair, too. Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into Farm Rio. We've covered their origins, their global expansion, and the challenges of navigating a complex market. Hopefully, you've walked away with some insights into what it takes to build a brand that resonates around the world. If you're as fascinated by Farm Rio as we are, be sure to check out their website and let us know what you think. Until next time, happy diving.